Hello and welcome to the next brain teaser in our series. So in this brain teaser, we have a set of 12 balls, okay, and I've labeled them A through L. And by the way, if you just want to verify that we actually have 12, we can, let's just say we chop them up into groups of 4, okay? So we have 3 groups of 4, okay? So the question is, you have 12 balls. They're all identical in every respect except for one ball, which identical in size, but it's just slightly heavier or slightly lighter than the other 11, and you're asked to identify that ball in as few measurements as possible. So you're given a scale, and that scale is a typical balance scale where you can put like 3 on one side and 3 on the other side and weigh them against each other and see which one is heavier or lighter. So so if you haven't seen this problem before, what I suggest you do is, now that you know the problem, go back and go off and solve it, or work through the problem, and spend as much time as you can to and work with the problem. And come back, in a couple days, and I'll and then you can see the solution here. Okay, so I will give a hint right now. So if you continue to listen, here's a hint that you can think about. The hint is that you can do this in 3 measurements. So you in 3 measurements are able to determine which ball it is, and you can tell me if it's heavier or lighter than the other 12. So that's the first hint. Okay, the second hint I'm going to give you now is that you should start by doing a measurement of 4 balls versus another 4 balls. Okay, and then from there, there's a big kind of tree of possible outcomes, and you basically have to work through all the logic, but it does work out. Okay, so now I'm actually solve the problem. It turns out it's a little tricky, so I might have to split this into 2 videos to get below the YouTube 10-minute limit. What we're going to do first, so step 1 is we're going to weigh A plus B plus C plus D. So we're picking these 4 balls, okay, and we're putting them on one side of the scale, and we're going to measure it against E, F, G, and H. Okay, so what are the possible outcomes? Well, the possible outcomes are that the balls on the left, all these A, B, C, D, they weigh more than these guys, or the inverse, maybe they weigh less than these guys, or it's possible that they weigh the same. So if they weigh exactly the same, then we know that either the heavier or the lighter ball is among these 4 here, I, J, K now. Okay, so the first part of this, so in the rest of this video, I'm going to work through the scenario where they're equal. Okay, so let's just say that they're equal, and then in the next video, just because I know it takes a while to go through all the logic, in the next video we'll work through the cases of when A, B, C, and D are either heavier or lighter than the other 4. So, okay, so we're working through this case. So in the case when they're equal, we now have identified all of these 8 balls are going to be standard balls. So I'm just going to kind of label them as, so anything that's blue is like a standard ball. It's like, they're all the same. These 8 are all identical, and then the unknowns are in here. Okay, so let's just see what happens. So we've done one measurement. We've determined that these 4 are the same as those 4. Let's take any 3 of the standard balls, like, okay, let's just say F, G, and H, the last 3 here, and we're going to weigh F plus G plus H, and we're going to compare that to, let's say, I plus J plus K. Okay, so what are the possible outcomes? Well, possible outcomes are they weigh the same. If they all weigh the same, like that is F plus G plus H equals the weight of I plus J plus K, then we know that L is the oddball out. So case 1, they're equal. That implies L is the ball we have to figure out. And then in order to determine if it's heavier or lighter, we can just measure L versus any of the other balls. So if we measure L versus a standard ball, I'm actually going to just draw it as a blue ball. So it could have been, we could pick H, or we could pick G, or any one. Well, whichever one whichever one is the, how do I change the color? Okay, there we go. So whichever one is the heavier one, actually, so I'm sorry, whatever you, when you measure L against the standard ball, if L is heavier, then we know that the oddball L is heavier. If L is lighter, then we know that the oddball L is lighter. And so in that way, we just measure L against the standard ball, and we figure out if it's lighter or heavier, and then we're done. So that's case one. So notice, by the way, we did the first measurement, the second measurement of these three standard balls against any of the three unknowns, and then we did a third measurement of L versus a standard ball. So case two is that they're not the same. So F plus G plus H, maybe it's heavier than I plus J plus K. So what does that imply? Well, we know F, G, and H are standard, and they're heavier than this, so that means that either I or J or K is slightly lighter than the standard ball. So we can take any two of those, and I'm just going to erase a little bit of this workspace here. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to continue on up here. So we can just pick out any two of those. Let's just say I picked out I and J. So let's just say we make I versus J. So remember, I've identified that it's lighter. So if I do I versus J and then they're same, then these weigh the same. Well, then that implies, if it's so case one, it implies that the answer is K. Okay. And we also know it's lighter. So it's if two of the balls are the same, it's the other ball that we didn't pick, and it's I'm sorry, not okay. So, and in the case where if we have the other case where let's say it's bigger, well, remember that we've identified it's either I, J, or K, which is lighter than the average ball. And so if I is heavier than J, then that implies that it's J that's the odd ball out. Okay. And it's lighter. We already had determined in this this second measurement, we measured F, G, and H versus I, J, and K. I already had a K here before, but I erased it. We determined that when we measured this versus this, and that the standard balls were heavier than I, J, K, that our ball had to be a lighter ball. Well, then when we got to this measurement here, this is measurement 3, that when we found that I is heavier than J, then that means that J had to be the lighter ball. And then the other case 3, is where it's I is less than J, which then means that, well, it's I is the lighter ball. Okay, so notice that we're actually done. I'm not going to walk through the other case, which is F plus G plus H is lighter than I and J and K, because that's basically it's identical to what we just worked through. It's just the reverse. In that case, you have I, J, and K. One of these three balls is slightly heavier than the standard ball, and then we work through the same kind of logic and can determine which of those balls it is that is the heavier one. Okay, so this concludes the first part of this video, which is to say what happens when we have 4 balls versus the other 4 balls, and we determine that these A, B, C, D equals the sum of the weights from A, B, C, and D equals the sum of the weights from E, F, G, and H. That implies that it's one of these 4 that's the oddball out, and then we had to work through the logic to determine, we had to work through a few more measurements to determine which of these four is the odd ball out, and is it a heavier or lighter ball. So I hope that, that's clear to you. And in the next video, you'll see what happens if these this measurement turns out to not produce an equal result. It turns out that either A, B, C, and D is heavier or lighter than the other four. So I'll go through that in the next